Jai Gurudev. Om Brahmanandam Paramasukhadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrasham Tattvamasyaadilakshyam Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Shrutismritipurananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badaraya Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara Vande Guru Parampara. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Chaiva Tato Jayamudiraye. Why this has taken us to 42 already. Have to go up. I think we were on verse 18, I think, right?
Yes, Prabhuji, 18.
18, isn't it? I think 450, if I remember. We did this. Yastvat maratireva syat atma triptascha manavaha atmanyeva cha santushtaha tasya karyam na vidyate. Whereas for the person who would delight in the self, who is satisfied with the self, contented in the self alone, there is nothing to be done. This is 447. I think we did this. Yeah, we did this bogi, yogi, and rogi. Becoming is a problem. Yeah, we'll start from here. Happiness is with the self alone. People pick up a moment of happiness when an external object desirable to them is gained. Whereas for the Atma Jnana Nishta, not being dependent on the gain of any external situations or objects, happiness is with the self alone. This means that such a person is free from any longing to be secure, to be happy, and is therefore a Sarva Karma Sannyasi, a Jnani, one who looks upon himself or herself not as a doer or an enjoyer, but as pure consciousness, that is Atma. For this person, there is no karma to be done. He is happy with himself, Atmani eva santushtaha. For a person who already has this knowledge, the Veda with all its enticing words is as useful as a well when the well water itself is underwater. The wise are in no way enjoined by the Veda to do anything. This is an important point of clarification, since the Veda prescribes daily and occasional rituals in such a way that people think there is no way for anyone to escape them. It is true that everyone performs action, even a jnani, but the jnani does not look upon himself or herself as a doer. For such a person, there is no doership, and therefore the Veda does not enjoin any action. The jnani is not even addressed, in fact. Only the ajnani, one who looks upon himself or herself as a doer, is addressed. It is like calling someone by name. Rama, please come here. Only Rama will come. Krishna will not come, nor will John. Similarly, it is only the ajnani, the doer, who is being addressed by the Veda. O doer, please perform this action. Only the person who looks upon himself or herself as a doer is bound by karma. Thus, karma yoga is not meant for a jnani, but for the ignorant, the ajnani alone. Karma yoga is enjoined for the ignorant because without it, you cannot acquire the knowledge. Thus, karma yoga becomes the indirect means for gaining the knowledge that is moksha. Here too, a doubt may arise. If knowledge of the Atma can only be gained by an inquiry into the pramana that gives this knowledge, why should I bother about karma yoga? After all, karma yoga is not the means for knowledge. It is only the means for antahkarana shuddhi. But can you inquire into the pramana and gain the knowledge if your mind is not prepared? The antahkarana, the mind, is where the knowledge has to take place. Thus, preparing the mind is necessary and is accomplished by karma yoga. This is why Krishna kept telling Arjuna to perform action, karma kuru. And again, this is why he told him that both the lifestyles, karma yoga and sannyasa or jnana yoga, are meant for moksha. The ritual of sannyasa can be performed for the sake of knowledge, but that does not mean that simply by taking sannyasa, you will achieve naishkarmya, actionlessness. Without knowledge, there is no naishkarmya. Throughout the Gita, this was Lord Krishna's contention. The next verse describes the person who knows that he or she is not a doer. Naiva tasya krite nartho na krite neha kaschana na chasya sarva bhuteshu kaschitarthavya pashraya. Tasya, for that person who rebels in the self, iha, here in this world, kritena, by doing action, arthaha na, there is no purpose, akritena, by not doing action, kaschana, any purpose, na eva, indeed is not, cha, and asya, for this person, sarva bhuteshu, on all beings, kaschit arthavya pashraya, dependence on any being or anything, na, is not. For that person who rebels in the self, there is indeed no purpose here in this world for doing or not doing action. Nor does such a person depend on any being for any object whatsoever. We have seen that karma is performed either for a specific result or for antahkarana shuddhi. The person being described in this and the previous verse does not require antahkarana shuddhi because without it, he or she would not have acquired the knowledge that has made it possible to revel in the Atma. Suppose the question is asked, how do you know the person has antahkarana shuddhi? Then the response is, because he or she has Atma Jnana Nishta, firmness in the knowledge of the self. Then the next question could be, but suppose the person has Atma Jnana Nishta and does not have Antahkarana Shuddhi. Here we have to question ourselves as to what is it that we really want? Do we want Antahkarana Shuddhi or Atma Jnana Nishta? Of course, we want only Atma Jnana Nishta, which can only be had if the mind is prepared. Thus, having the knowledge implies Antahkarana Shuddhi. The karma is either one that produces a result that is outside oneself, that is other than oneself, or the karma is with reference to the person's antahkarana. When you require nothing more than yourself, nothing else will benefit you in terms of happiness or security. And if some purpose, some benefit is there in terms of either security or happiness, then you do not know yourself. If you think that there is some benefit to be gained in heaven, it indicates that you do not look upon yourself, the Atma, as fullness, the whole creation being oneself. Where is the question of gaining some benefit somewhere? Therefore, for the wise person, no purpose is served by doing karma. So here, an important point for us to understand is when a person is a karma yogi, he does it only for antahkarana shuddhi. That is, there is no other benefit in terms of either security or happiness other than knowing himself. That is, there is no external benefit that he derives. That is not the intention he or she has when he does karma. Then whatever he does, that amounts to creating antahkarana shuddhi. That is, even when we sit and pray or we do any ritual, if we think, okay, by doing this, we're going to get some benefit or we're going to heaven, that is doing karma for a given result. So we are just doing it for the sake of doing because the Shastra says so, or because this is what is ordained for us to do. Then it becomes cleansing, it amounts to cleansing the mind. Can there be a result without action? There is another contention to be considered here. It is granted that by performing action, a person with this knowledge does not get a result. But by not doing what is to be done, will there not be an undesirable result? This seems to be our experience. Is it not the same for a wise person? The Veda says that certain karmas are to be performed daily. According to the contention being discussed here, there are certain karmas such as breathing for which there is no result. All that happens is that you continue to live, nothing more. It is only when you do not breathe that you have a problem. This then is the contention. There are certain karmas that we have to do, and by doing them, we do not achieve anything. But by not doing them, we attract papa. When you do not do the prayers, rituals, and duties, which are to be done daily and occasionally, there is a problem. Whereas if you do them, there is no problem. Shankara dismisses this argument as meaningless. When you perform an action, there is always a result, says Shankara. There is no such thing as a karma not producing a result. You cannot even throw a small pebble into a pond without creating ripples. There will always be a result. Suppose a karma done does not produce a result, and only when you do not do it, there is a result. How can an action that I have not done produce a result? If I do not do an action, it will produce neither a desirable nor an undesirable result because nothing has been done. Karma done will produce a result, and karma not done will not. It is as simple as that. Why then is it said that if you do not do these enjoined karmas, you will attract sin and so on? Because if you do not do what is to be done, it will take no time at all for you to do what is not to be done. Therefore, doing karma is always better than not doing it, because by not doing it, you will attract a lot of other problems. Sooner or later, laziness will overcome you and you will begin doing improper things. As a human being, you are supposed to be a thinking person, but the thinking itself will be the first casualty. Your capacity for discrimination and inquiry will go, leaving you to ruminate and vegetate. This kind of problem is not there for the jnani. Everything that has been said is for an ajnani alone. For the jnani, there is nothing to be accomplished or to get rid of because he or she is fullness. The do's and don'ts do not affect such a person, nor are dharma and adharma applicable. The jnani is above right and wrong. Does this mean that he or she can do anything, including murder? Yes, because the person is not a doer. Of course, there is no reason for a wise person to commit murder because there is nothing to be gained. So, for those people, there is a distinction here between doing karma, that is between a jnani and an ajnani. The whole verse is about a jnani, saying the jnani does not need to do any karma, neither does he not do any action. So either way, he is fullness. So there is neither doing nor not doing, because he himself is a non-doer. Whereas for an ajnani, all the karma that produces, the karma that is being enjoined to do is addressing a ajnani. So what Shankara says, what the Purva Pakshi's contention was, if you do karma that is enjoined by the Shastra, you you gain a result. But if you do not do it, you gain papa. That is what Shankara says. He says that is not true, because by not doing any karma, you don't gain any papa. Because by not doing the ritual, you don't gain anything. But what happens is if you do not do that, it will not take any time for you to do things which are not to be done. And when you do things which are not to be done, that of course incurs papa. So result can happen only when you do anything, not by not doing. Doership and knowledge do not coexist. Behind a murder or any other crime, there is a small person, an ahankara ego. A person who knows himself or herself to be fullness cannot commit a crime. Crime is only possible when there is fear, greed, anger, and so on, all of which the wise person has already taken care of. A criminal act cannot coexist along with the knowledge that I am the whole. For a person to commit a crime, there has to be the notion, I must do this or that so that I can be somebody. Such a notion implies an ajnani and is not there for a jnani, which is why it is said that the jnani is above dharma and adharma, right and wrong, do's and don'ts. There is no doing or not doing for the jnani in the sense that the person knows that he or she is not the doer. And when there is nothing for the jnani to do, because there is no sense of doership, what is there that he or she cannot do? A jnani is not dependent on anything or anyone, from Brahmaji downwards, including all beings that exist anywhere. When you say, Indraya Swaha, unto Indra I offer this oblation, the god Indra becomes the basis for gaining something, some strength, some money, health, power, purification of the mind, some purpose. Kaschit arthavya pashraya is served. For example, you can say that you are performing this karma for the sake of knowledge, for the sake of dispassion, vairagya. In order for this dispassion and knowledge to grow in you, you are offering this prayer. This is all well and good, but it is still arthavya pashraya. There is some devata to whom you offer the prayer. A petition may also be extended to Ishvara, to a devata, or to a local village official, the person to whom the petition is offered being the arthavya pashraya. Arthavya pashraya. If I perform an action in order to accomplish something, then that because of which I perform the action also becomes arthavya pashraya. But Krishna said there is no arthavya pashraya whatsoever for a wise person. He or she cannot say, I'm doing this karma, I'm invoking Ishvara for the purpose of gaining knowledge, because the knowledge has already been gained. For the jnani, there is no Ishvara other than Atma. All that is there is Ishvara alone, and that Ishvara has already done everything that is to be done. He has paid off all the person's prayers. This is why the person is called jnani. This is what we mean by moksha. Therefore, amongst all the beings and things, there is nothing upon which a jnani depends for anything. No one is going to contribute to his or her betterment. No one is going to affect the jnani's fullness in any way. And the fullness that the jnani knows himself or herself to be is not dependent upon anything. It is oneself, and everything else is oneself also. Tasmadasaktas satatam karyam karma samachara asakto hyacharan karma paramapnoti purushaha. Tasmat, therefore, asaktaha, without attachment, satatam, always, karyam, what is to be done, karma, action, samachara, perform well. He, because asaktaha, without attachment, karma, action, acharan, performing, purushaha, person, param, the highest, apnoti, attains. Therefore, always perform well the action that is to be done without attachment, because by performing action without attachment, a person attains the highest. Given what has gone before, what does the first verse of this first word of this verse therefore mean? Krishna had just said that for the wise, there is no karma to be done, and that by doing karma or not doing it, nothing is gained and nothing is lost. Why then was Krishna now talking about performing action? Arjuna had expected him to say, therefore, Arjuna, do not do anything. But could Krishna really have had said such a thing? No, it is true that he had already established that knowledge could not be gained by doing or not doing action. Pursue knowledge, Krishna said, but then what is to be done? Please do it. This seemingly contradictory statement was based on the fact that if knowledge is already there is nothing for you to do. But until that knowledge takes place, do whatever is to be done by you. The word therefore is connected to the topic ending with the 19th verse. The what is in it for me attitude. In this verse, Krishna also reminded Arjuna that karma is not yoga, binds the person. Performing action without attachment refers to the attitude one should have towards the results of one's action. Karma phala. A vulture flying in the sky looks as though it is just gliding along, enjoying the flight. But in fact, its eyes and beak are always directed downwards so as not to miss some dead rat or other prey to swoop down upon. No matter how high it soars, a vulture's eyes are always on the prey. Thus, the expression vulturous. People are said to have a vulturous attitude when they think that anything they do should bring them something. Because this attitude is so prevalent, people sometimes find it very difficult to understand a person who does things without expecting anything in return. One's likes and dislikes need not constantly dictate one's actions. Dharma and adharma can as well dictate them. Thus Krishna said to Arjuna, what is to be done? Please do. Through karma yoga alone, you can gain the antakarna shuddhi that leads to steadfastness in the knowledge. Only then can you revel in the Atma. Knowledge itself requires no action. It will take care of itself. This then is what Krishna meant when he said to either pursue knowledge while doing karma or take to the life of sannyasa. That this choice is there is without question, but the end is the same for both. Which one is more appropriate for you is all that matters. If you choose the one that is more appropriate for you, you will be the gainer. But if you choose sannyasa and it is not appropriate for you, the life of a sannyasi will not bear the fruits that you expect. In Krishna's view, karma yoga was exactly what Arjuna was fit for. Thus, he tells him to continue doing karma yoga and also to pursue knowledge. Not until all 18 chapters of the Gita had been taught by Krishna did Arjuna finally say, I am going to do what is to be done. He then started the fight and finished it. By the time the Pandavas had become victorious, a lot of people had been lost. Arjuna's son Abhimanyu, Draupadi's 5 sons, Bhishma, Drona, Duryodhana, and all his brothers, Karna, and so many others. Thus, a lot of destruction had been done, and Arjuna was very sad. He then asked Krishna to teach him again. Arjuna might have said something like, before the war began long ago, before all the fireworks, we had a dialogue. It was wonderful. Please teach me again, because I have forgotten the words. Perhaps the message is with me still, but the words are gone. Krishna replied that although he could not repeat the teaching verbatim, he could go over what he had taught him previously. Thus, there is one more Gita called Uttara Gita, meaning a subsequent Gita. Arjuna knew that he had to gain this knowledge. In his present circumstances, in the middle of the battlefield, he could only listen. There was no time for him to do a thorough analysis and reflect on everything Krishna was telling him. Therefore, it was something he had to work out. This was why Krishna told him that he should continue to do karma and gain knowledge in the process. The Shastra says that one should do what has to be done with a mind free from the hold of likes and dislikes, with reference to the results of one's actions. When one performs actions in this way, the mind becomes purified. Only when the mind is prepared can knowledge take place, and through the knowledge, one gains moksha. You will find this point consistently reiterated by Shankara in this bhashya. Karma yoga or any other yoga does not directly produce moksha, as we have seen. To think otherwise is not to understand. First, the mind is to be prepared through karma yoga, and then knowledge can take place. There is an order here, and it is this order that Krishna was describing in this verse. Then he continued. No wonder why, that is why we wanted to redo the karma yoga again. Because not all of us remember all that we have read before. So just like Arjuna wanted Krishna to repeat it. He said, you said something beautiful. I want to listen to it again. Please teach me. कर्मणैव हि संसिद्धिम् आस्तिता जनकादयः लोकसङ्ग्रहमेवापि सम्पश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि. He indeed, Janakadayaha, Janaka and others, Karmana eva, by action alone, Samsiddhim, liberation, Astitaha, gained, Api also, Loka Sangraham, of protecting the people from falling into unbecoming ways, eva, merely, Sampashyan, seeing the desirability, Kartum, to perform action, Arhasi, ought to. Indeed, by action alone, Janaka and others gained liberation. Also, by merely seeing the desirability of protecting the people from falling into unbecoming ways, you ought to perform action. Krishna did not say that karma is to be done by everyone. Karma yoga is meant for a person who is a mumukshu, who is desirous of the knowledge that is liberation. For a jnani, one who already has the knowledge, there is no karma to be done. Kartavyam nasti, because there is no doer. The absence of doership is purely in terms of knowledge. The jnani knows that he or she is not the doer or enjoyer of any action. Knowing this, a wise person is not bound by any karma, nor is he or she enjoined to do any karma, even by the Veda. Only a mumukshu has to do karma, as does the aviveki, one who is only interested in fulfilling his or her ragadveshas. It goes without saying that an aviveki, a person whose likes and dislikes have to be fulfilled, has no choice. Karma definitely has to be done by such a person. And while performing action, he or she has to follow dharma and adharma, right and wrong. Otherwise, the results of the person's actions will be something undesirable, if not immediately, certainly later. A person who has a value for dharma need not be a mumukshu, a viveki, but may legitimately fulfill his or her desires, keeping what is right and wrong in view. A mumukshu also does karma, but not always to fulfill his or her likes and dislikes. More often than not, such a person does karma simply in order to do what is to be done in a given situation. And if the person does perform action in order to fulfill his or her likes and dislikes, the action is performed and the results of the action, whatever they may be, are taken as prasada, gifts from the Lord. Here in this verse, Krishna provided further arguments for the performance of karma. People who have really given up everything to pursue this knowledge enjoy a certain disposition that, according to the Shastra, is not gained accidentally. They have earned it by performing karma with the proper attitude. Thus, karma yoga precedes antahkarana shuddhi, purification of the mind, which in turn precedes jnana, knowledge. This order is the context for the present verse. Janaka and others like him, Ashwapati for instance, are mentioned in the Shruti. They were all kings and householders. They had offices to keep and were very busy with a variety of activities which were kartavyam karma, to be done karmas. They were also considered to be wise men who had gained some siddhi, another word for moksha, liberation. They had discovered freedom by living a life of karma, a life of activity. The wise need not give up activity. Even though considered by the Shruti to be wise men and scholars also, Janaka and the others were not renunciates. They were householders. They acquired wisdom without giving up karma. Thus, it is very clear that performing karma is not against moksha, even though it cannot produce moksha. Only knowledge can be said to produce moksha, moksha being an already accomplished fact. In other words, Atma, oneself, is already liberated, mukta, and knowledge alone makes us recognize this fact. And to prepare the mind for this recognition, there are a lot of means that one can use. This then is the reason for saying that there is nothing equal to knowledge for gaining liberation. The use of the words produce and make here must be properly understood. Because knowledge is always true to a fact, it cannot make or produce anything unless there is a fact. Knowledge of the object pot will only be equal to what is there, a pot. If the pot is a clay pot, it is a clay pot, not a brass pot. By knowledge, you cannot change the nature of the pot. You can only understand its nature. This is the very meaning of knowledge. Moksha is always for oneself. It is not for anyone else. And because the self is already mukta, moksha is always for oneself. It is not for anyone else. And because the self is already mukta, moksha can only be gained by knowledge of the fact that the self is liberated. Moksha is already accomplished in the self, and one can gain this knowledge without giving up karma, as Janaka and others like him did. Karma is only opposed to knowledge when performed purely for fulfilling one's raga dveshas and not for neutralizing them. Such karma is without any doubt binding in nature. This, however, is not the karma that Krishna was referring to here. He was talking about karma that is to be undertaken by oneself with an attitude of karma yoga. This karma is a yoga whereby you gain the kind of mind necessary for the knowledge to take place. After knowledge, why do action? Understanding that one does karma to render one's mind fit for the knowledge, you may ask why the wise should continue to do karma once the knowledge has been gained. If Janaka and the others had already come to know, should they not have dropped all the karma? No, Krishna said. They could continue to do whatever karma was there for them to do, according to their prarabdha, the result of previous karma that had caused their present births. Once knowledge is gained, all action is spontaneous. Whatever is to take place will take place. No one is going to stop it. Therefore, if Janaka were to continue being the king, he would be the king. If he were to renounce everything and continue his life as a sannyasi, he would have done so. It all depended on what was stored in his prarabdha. Once a person is no longer bound by his or her karma or by any raga dvesha, the question of performing or not performing karma simply does not arise. How the person lives, whether he or she lives a life of activity or a life free from all activities, depends purely on the person's prarabdha. He or she is no longer controlled by likes and dislikes. Even the desire for moksha, for liberation, is gone, having been fulfilled by the knowledge of the truth of oneself. The doer not being there, there is virtually nothing for a wise person to do. Nor is there anything that such a person cannot do either. What the person will do depends only on what happens within him or her, itself governed by the prarabdha that resulted in this particular birth. Prarabdha karma is generally accompanied by the free will that a human being has. This free will can interfere with the prarabdha karma in many ways, modifying it, mending it, working against it, and doing anything else to it that free will can do. Given that prarabdha karma and free will go together, every situation is both prarabdha based and will based. Where prarabdha stops and free will begins, no one can say. There is no way of knowing which one brought you to a particular situation. In the wake of self-knowledge, however, free will is not a factor. Only then does prarabdha alone take care of your life. If it is in your prarabdha to teach, you teach. If you are to sit quietly, then that is what you do. And if you have to rule a kingdom, you rule the kingdom, just as Janaka did. Krishna mentioned Janaka here because Janaka was a king who was considered to be a wise man. Being a king meant that Janaka engaged in a lot of activities. He did not just sit and relax. He was the one whose phone was constantly ringing, so to speak. Even though he had a lot of people to help him, they were always asking him for advice. They would ask, what should I tell this person? What should I tell that person? We do not have money. Our granary is empty. What shall we do? But in spite of all the activities that were involved in ruling the kingdom, Janaka continued to rule because of his prarabdha. Knowing that Arjuna's prarabdha was to fight this battle, Krishna told him to do karma. It was not that Arjuna had decided to fight Duryodhana. He did not even want this war. He was brought to it by his prarabdha. Arjuna was right inside this particular situation, one that warranted certain action on his part. If Janaka and the others were wise men, they continued to do their jobs because of their prarabdha. And if they were not wise, they were doing karma yoga. The point Krishna was making here is that a person achieves wisdom by doing whatever is to be done and not by running away from it. Krishna might have said to Arjuna, suppose you look upon yourself as a wise man. Are you going to say, I am a wise man, therefore I should not do action? Is there any rule that says that a wise man should not do action? If a so-called wise man deciding that he is wise does not do karma, it means that he is bound by karma because he is taking himself to be a karta, a doer. And if he is bound by karma, he is definitely not wise. Wisdom is knowing that Atma is not a doer, that Atma is a karta. For the person who has this wisdom, there is no mandate to do or not to do karma. This in no way means that because you are wise, you will not do karma. Not to do karma amounts to laziness, unless, of course, you take sannyasa, for which a certain preparedness is required. The point here is that even if you are a wise person, you can look at the situation you have been presented with and do what is to be done. So I thought we'll just stop and pause here. Anyone wants to share anything here? Because this part is very profound, wherein the aspect of prarabdha karma and free will. I'll read this paragraph again. Prarabdha karma is generally accompanied by the free will that a human being has. This free will can interfere with the prarabdha karma in many ways, modifying it, mending it, working against it, and doing anything else to it that free will can do. Given that prarabdha karma and free will go together, every situation is both prarabdha based and will based. Where prarabdha stops and free will begins, no one can say. There is no way of knowing which one brought you to a particular situation. In the wake of self-knowledge, however, free will is not a factor. So for a jnani, there is no free will there. Only then does prarabdha alone take care of your life. So if your prarabdha is to teach, you teach. But for an ajnani, there is both the prarabdha and free will. And depending on how you use your free will, you will direct your life's journey. So using, yeah, go ahead.
I was under the impression that free will comes under the boundary of your prarabdha. I didn't know that it can modify your prarabdha, because that is fixed, right? Prarabdha, what we come with, it's fixed now, for now. So within that boundary, we can have a free will. This is what my understanding. And did it say it a little differently here? I'm not very sure.
That is why he says prarabdha karma is generally accompanied by the free will that a human being has.
Before that, it says it modifies the prarabdha. Can you please read that sentence again?
This
No. It doesn't modify. It doesn't modify. You become jnani, After you become jnani, you are not a doer. Means you don't have a free will to do. Okay? You are staying, you are living because of the prarabdha, whatever you are having, you are receiving it. So whatever the jnani who has already reached, he is living there because of the prarabdha and not because of the free will.
Right.
And also, he said Janaka is ruling because of his prarabdha. He ruled. Janaka ruled because of
that is fine. Just the previous sentence Brahmaraji read. Can you please read it again?
Prarabdha karma is generally accompanied by the free will that a human being has. This free will can interfere with the prarabdha karma in many ways, modifying it, mending it, working against it, and doing anything else to it that free will can do.
This is what I was asking. I mean, How
Means all these
how can
things,
it mend or modify? Because prarabdha is fixed, right? This free will can be it will have an effect to your future prarabdha. This was my understanding, but this sentence makes me a little confused.
See, if you
can
remember
I
earlier, yeah, go ahead, Savita ji.
yeah, what I understood is that prarabdha karma, you are born with the prarabdha karma, and you are something like something is depicted in your horoscope. You are born with that, and it is the free will. If you are on like if you are doing your prayers or you are doing your rituals, or you are suppose something is depicted that you will have a fracture in your leg, or you'll have some type of injury or disease, and if you know it previously in your birth chart, and you do effort for it, that I improve my health, or I'll do my some homa or some puja, some chanting, then that is you are uh,
Modifying
do,
it.
you're presiding over your free will. So you are doing your effort, and it's been seen like if something is depicted in horoscope, then it's when you are doing all your efforts in all these ways, the incident is to a very small degree. It doesn't affect you much. What I
Same
understood
way,
by
no? Yeah,
thank
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, I get
Correct.
it now because even in astrology, some houses are fixed, I mean, some karmas are fixed, some are flexible, some can be modified. Yes, I get it.
And one more thing I want to add here, even our DNA is also, no, depending on the prarabdha, so many things are already ingrained in the DNA, and automatically that pushes you into that kind of karmas. Because see how for smelling, to experience the smell, the nose is the um miss what you can say, the nose is there for smelling. Same as for karma, DNA is responsible for smelling. How the nose is responsible for the karma, the kind of karma the person is doing, its DNA is responsible. His or her DNA is responsible. So same way the prarabdha and all, connected to your prarabdha, you will get the birth in that kind of family, and in your DNA the karma, the whole thing is already ingrained, and that pushes you into that direction exactly. But when you are doing all these chanting, all these practices, and with the guru grace, definitely the impact of the negative karmas or whatever can be very much uh, up to certain extent it can be nullified. And the free will, where we use it, wherever we get the chance, if we enhance our positivity to the max with the knowledge, with gurus, this thing, with the sangha, kind of sangha you are moving in, that builds up your positivity whenever you get the chance, even through little bit through your DNA. But the building up is in your that free will, and that will push you to decide the what kind of life you want in the next lifetime. Many things are there in your hand, and many things are there which are not under your control, but with the help of the knowledge, with the grace of the guru, the things can be modified in many much more percentage. Jai Gurudev.
One more point. With the free will, you can become free.
Correct.
You can get the freedom.
Very
But
right.
Yes, this is very important aspect, Sureshji. Very, very, very
that is what
important.
that is what we can change with the free will, and then you have the prarabdha. You will stay along, and you become that bhogi of that prarabdha until your lifetime. But you can be free. That is jivan mukta with the free will.
In many instances, we have seen many teachers are met with accident, And it has been Guru's grace that they have come out with very minor bruises. I remember a friend of mine who was an ashramite. They had traveled with Gurudev to Australia, New Zealand. After that, Gurudev took a flight and went to Canada. And they, instead of taking a flight to come back from place A to place B, the last place where they left off Gurudev, they thought of going to a spa. So they booked a Hertz rent-a-car. And whilst they were going, all of them were so tired because they were traveling with Gurudev for over a month now that they fell asleep. And even the driver fell asleep, and they barged into the middle section where the lamppost and the dividers and all that are there. And the car was completely crashed. So according to the Prarabh, they had to go meet with an accident. They met with an accident. And the thing was that Vikram's songs were still playing. All the bhajan that Vikram was singing was still playing, though the car was smashed. And they came out through the glass window, rear window, and they just had minor bruises on them. So I think whatever has to happen, happened, but the impact on them was lessened because of Guru's grace. Jai Guru.
My God, this is such an example, isn't it?
Very
It's,
beautiful. And another
my-
thing, when we talk of free will, all the purusharthas are nothing but free will, isn't it? It is only human beings have free will. If you remember, if you go back to the introduction to Gita, between animals and humans, it is only human beings have this capacity of free will, which is what gives us these four purusharthas: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So using your free will, you direct your life's activity either towards the artha, kama, dharma, or moksha. So your prarabdha, like Madhuriji very beautifully said, is already ingrained in your DNA. But how you are working around, what you're doing, for instance, Sudarshan Kriya, practice of Sudarshan Kriya has been research proven to change your DNA in subtle ways, wherein should I say, the longevity gene is opened up. That is why people who practice these practices never look old. You cannot make out their age by looking at their face. So there is some there is subtle changes that are happening in DNA. So therefore you can modify your prarabdha by doing these practices, by using your free will. If you're a mumukshu and you're following certain practices, you can of course alter your prarabdha. That is why the free will is what to do, not to do, or do otherwise. That is in our hands. So how we use our free will, for instance, there is satsang happening, you have a will, you have a free will. The prarabdha is that you got to know about the satsang. I'm just giving a very mundane example. It might be, true. Maybe it has to be fine-tuned a bit. That you know about the satsang is your prarabdha. But whether you attend it, not attend it, or do differently is completely up to you. So therefore, every action, every situation is both prarabdha as well as free will. And where prarabdha stops and where free will begins, no one can say. That is what Swamiji also says.
Dr. Dhamra, may I add something?
Yes, please go ahead.
Those who know astrology in the group, Nitin and Savitaji, they will know that third house, sixth house, 10th house, and 11th are the only ones where the free will works.
Where the
Free will.
free will.
Whereas the fifth house represents Purva Karma, Purva Janam Karma, and ninth house represents the Prarabdha Karma. So I know this Nitzmelin. I think you know astrology. I don't know your name, but this is already known that those houses, they have to go through our past life karmic account, because that they have accumulated. So Radha Karna and Sanchit Karna, they go through the other four houses. The third house is the house of Rakram, 10th house is the house of Karma, Karam. So there are four houses in which they have free will to change your work, hard work, practices, etc. So, listener can
Yes.
connect.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the same thing I had repeated a few days back actually, but I myself have forgotten about it, and I couldn't relate this to this. But I got it once. Someone started saying, "Yeah, it can be changed with free will." Then I came. Those points came back to me. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it is clearly written in astrology.
And if you look at the whole of the Bhagavad Gita and the teaching, all this is so beautifully intricate. The whole idea of, see, for instance, when Krishna talks about food and he talks about sattva, rajas, and tamas, you are given a choice. If you are attending a party or whatever, you have a whole wide spread of food there. It is based on your shraddha, your whether you're sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic, your inner attitude, you will go towards that food. But supposing you wanted to, you use your free will otherwise and have 2 or 3 helpings of a very heavy item, say dessert, for instance, that will show up in your attitude the next day. So if you step back and look at the whole tapestry that the Bhagavad Gita has given us, it's so beautifully, intricately interwoven. Our choice, the free will that we exercise, how it affects our own shraddha again, and how that shraddha affects our actions, and how that produces, we are creating a blueprint for our next janma. So prarabdha is the underlying, so-called, maybe the station that we are already tuned to in this life. If you consider that as a radio station, we are in one particular radio station. But what kind of song we want to play in that station is our free will. So we're connected to that frequency. That is our prarabdha. But what song you want to play? Do you want to play bhajans that will take you higher up? You want to play jazz and things which are very disruptive? Or do you want to go gossip, do a lot of negative gossip? All that is your free will.
That is what I think we discussed this earlier, that I had gone to the central jail in Hubli to teach the Sudarshan Kriya for 6 days for 100 convicts. So my prarabdha karma was there to go to jail. But my free will has made me to go in this way.
Correct.
That is because your 12th house was activated, and 12th house is hospital, jail, or ashram.
Like that.
So the remedy, so sometimes what happens when you go to Jyotishi with some problem also, he'll advise you to go to ashram, stay in ashram, because 12th house is activated, and instead of going to hospital and jail, you would better be in the ashram with Guru. So this is the upaya they will give you.
But I think Gurudev tells some people, you stay back and stay in the ashram, do some seva.
Very
Mrinal, if you
good.
there was Hema Srini, who was in Bahrain, who
Yeah.
moved to Canada later, right? She, after she became a teacher, she so wanted to become an art excel teacher, but Gurudev made her a happiness teacher there, basic course teacher. She was very upset about that. And then he told her, stay back in the ashram for 3 months before you move to Canada. So she actually she stayed back and then just came to Bahrain, packed her bags and then left. So
Yeah.
it's falling in place. The understanding is happening there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know Hema?
Hema Srini. Hema, I'm not sure which Hema you're talking about. There is one.
From Mumbai. She is now in Canada, Calgary.
Calgary, right.
Yeah, very good, very good.
There are 3 sisters, I think. They're,
Yeah, one is gone.
yeah, I
One
know
is
one.
gone. The
Correct.
other eldest one is our neighbor, Jyoti.
Oh, is it?
So
What a
Hema and Srini, both of them, they regularly come to our house.
Such a small world it is.
I know. And her sister's, Hema's sister's son is brought up here only in our colony.
Right.
Mahalakshmi's son. Now Jyoti's husband is a Apex member of Maharashtra.
Right. So what I was also thinking, what came to my mind about Prarabdha is, so many people had questions. How come Rishi Nitya Prajna died of COVID? That was his Prarabdha. No one could have stopped that. Isn't it? So one of my friends who's not Art of Living, she listens to his bhajan. She said, oh, he's such a divine voice. But how come he died? He's an Art of Living teacher. I was saying that was how it was meant to be. So we cannot escape the prarabdha. It only can be modified, mended, or
I think even I have shared my experience. Few times I have been saved like this. Like I was supposed to travel to US, 24 hours journey. And just few hours back before, I had terrible stomach pain and I had to admit and got operated for my urine stone. If it had, I couldn't imagine that if it had happened on the plane, what would I have done? So I had to go through the pain, but right in time it happened and I could escape the ordeal. There are a few more instances, but some other time.
Yeah.
Nice. Mrinalji, you see the horoscope?
No, I like to study, but I don't see anybody's horoscope. I like to study as a science. And because I never believed in these things, like, because I was surrounded by people who thought that this is the only life. But I have some interest in these things. So this came as an accident, though astrology to me. But then I started believing in these things, karma or janma, purva janma, then you'll have next janma. After studying the astrology, I started having faith in these things. I could feel that, yes, it does really happen.
Your 6th house and 9th house are active.
Yes, that was my Ashtam Shani.
Yeah.
The day Ashtam Shani, because the Guru and Shani was there just before the COVID started.
Yeah.
We were confined to a house.
This is also your prarabdha.
Yes. Yeah, because my first house is Ketu. Again, occult sciences.
Occult, wow. Are you from Astrolog?
No, this is from Art of Living.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Gurudev always says, height is your destiny, weight is your free will. Same way. Yeah.
Very right. Very simply put, no? Height is
Yeah.
your destiny and
Destiny.
weight is your will. What a simple way to explain it.
No, he says past is destiny, future is free will.
Which is true. But he also says this, no? Your height is your destiny and your weight is...
Yeah.
See, only when you see your future as free will you take responsibility. Otherwise, you will vegetate. You will get into inaction. You'll say, "Oh, let it happen. If it's in my prarabdha, I will do it." No. If you take that step forward, unless you exercise your free will, that is why they say when people, when they're asked to do courses, they say, if it is in my prarabdha, inshallah, if it happens, it happens. That is being very passive. You're not taking responsibility for your life. But if you're exercising your free will and you take that one step, 99 steps, the divine will come and take you. This so often happens with VTP, with TTP, so many, I mean, any course that you talk about, forget about course, anything in your life. Unless you take that decision, unless you exercise your free will, you would be the loser. Arjuna was a leader. In Arjuna's case, the people had to be protected. Arjuna was a leader, whether he liked it or not. Even if he himself thought he was not a leader, people looked upon him as one. Therefore, he had to do what was expected of a leader. There are three types of leaders. One type of leader is the opportunist who becomes a leader to promote a particular cause in which he or she has a personal interest. Community leaders tend to be of this sort. Temples and churches usually get built in this way. A person who is successful in the community comes forward and heads a particular project. However, because others also want to be leaders, problems among various members of the community are inevitable. Thus, when there is an opportunity available, a person who wants power and who has the leisure and resources required will organize the situation so that he or she becomes the leader. When an opportunist wields power in this way, just one second. When an opportunist wields power in this way, it is usually an ego trip or in the interest of money. Generally speaking, our societies are led by such people. Another type of leader is who is even more dangerous is the idealist. The opportunist has no ideal other than his or her ego and sets sail purely according to the direction of the wind. Such a person can switch political parties simply by crossing the floor. The idealist, on the other hand, is not on a power trip. This type of leader looks upon society as being full of problems that have to be solved by him or her, for which the person has a particular system, political, economic, religious, and so on. Certain religious leaders, for example, tend to think that they alone have the answers and everyone else is a heathen whom they alone must save. In other words, an idealist is one who thinks that the answers can only come through him or her. This is why such a person can be a real danger to a society. Communists, terrorists, and nationalists are all idealists who make such contentions as, my country is the greatest country, my culture is the greatest culture, my religion is the greatest religion, or my political or economic system is the only answer. An opportunist can easily be discovered, whereas The idealist converts more and more people to his or her way of thinking. When an idealist talks, there is so much conviction, so much heart and mind being brought to bear on the topic that those who are gullible will go along with whatever is being said. The idealist is one who has sold himself or herself on a particular idea and is prepared to die for it. Hitler being a case in point. His blue blood theory, blue blood, I think it should have been. I don't know whether that was a typo. Blue blood, yeah. His blue blood theory was pure idealism and caused the colossal destruction of millions of people. He really believed he was the one who was born to protect and rule the world, and that people of the Aryan race were superior. Once this idea struck him, Hitler had no rest, nor did he allow others to rest. Under the spell of this idealism, they carried out his atrocious orders. Throughout the history of the world, we find that wherever there were idealists, there was war and colossal destruction. Idealism creates religious and political fanatics, and these people create havoc, as the history books reveal. The third type of leader is one who leads, not because he or she wants to lead, but because there are some people following. Such a person lives his or her life always ready to reshuffle his or her ideas in order to live according to what is true. The person may not even know that he or she is a leader. Thus, whether it is to one's liking or not, one becomes a leader. This is the type of leading that makes one a real leader. And this was the kind of leader Arjuna was. Here Krishna said to Arjuna, whether you like it or not, there are people who look up to you as their leader. Arjuna was the archer of the age and was looked upon by the people as a trendsetter. He was supposed to set an example and was not, therefore, someone who could just walk away from it all. This was not his prarabdha. That was not his prarabdha. If Arjuna had been a loner and had wanted to become a sannyasi, Krishna would not have talked with him about the appropriateness of karma yoga and so on. Krishna would have agreed to Arjuna's becoming a sannyasi, even though he knew there would be some problems. This, however, was not Arjuna's situation. Being a leader and looked up to by all the people, he had to set a proper example. And if he set a wrong example, the people would follow it. Therefore, to protect the people, Arjuna had to do his karma, even if he considered himself a jnani. That was how his prarabdha had set up his situation. And if he was a karma yogi, protecting the world was his karma yoga because he was a leader and that was what had to be done. I think we will stop here. We will do a bit of Manana and so that we can finish on time. Oh,
Dr. Prabhu,
perhaps just a second. Yes, Dr. Renu.
can you ask Nazi to share her number with me?
I will share her number. I'll share her number with you.
Okay, thank you.
Action is not opposed to knowledge. The question that may arise here is why the world is to be protected. All that is involved here is that you find yourself in a situation with duties to perform. Someone has to be in this particular position and you happen to be that person. If you were not there, someone else would be. There is no choice involved here. Arjuna did not choose to be the son of Pandu. He happened to be born into this particular royal family and therefore had certain jobs to do. Thus Krishna said, whether you are a jnani or a karma yogi, here is the situation for you to do karma. This is not opposed to knowledge because you are not a doer. Karma can be done even if you know that you are not the karta. Or put another way, karma is not opposed to knowledge, nor is it a means to knowledge. Because by just doing karma, you cannot gain moksha. If you have no viveka, karma can bind you. Whereas it can also be a means for purifying your mind if you make it a yoga by a change of attitude. In the next verse, Krishna told Arjuna why he should do his duty. So we'll do verse 21 from tomorrow. So we'll stop here, which is why Krishna himself was doing his action. I mean, he was teaching. That is an action. He's a jnani. There is no need for him to, but that was his, he was given that situation. In the middle of the battlefield, Arjuna asked him, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. I am your student. Please teach me. So Krishna did not shy away because he's a jnani. There is, whether he taught, did not teach, did not make any difference to his knowledge. He was anyway a jnani. But that he was given that situation, he had to act. So karma, action is not opposed to knowledge. Similarly, Arjuna was in such a situation. It was his prarabdha to be born as Pandu's son, to be born as a Kshatriya. It was his prarabdha also to go through that 12 years of Vanavasa and 1 year of Ajnatavasa. And whether or not Arjuna, even if Arjuna was considered a jnani, he still had to do karma because he was a leader. And people are looking up to him to protect dharma. I think Dr. Simi, you have to mute yourself. You're getting unmuted time and again.
Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. Just be mindful of that. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So anyone wants to share anything?
There is a story in the Puranas regarding Shivji giving a shrap that for 7 years there would be a drought because of the way people had behaved. So when that 2.5 years had passed, Shivji was going around taking his around the world, looking as to how the situations were. People were really suffering. Suddenly he comes across a farm where a farmer was hull, what do you call that in English? He was tilling his field with his plow, yes, with his plow. And so Shivji gets very this thing as to for 2.5 years there has been no rains. Why is this fellow plowing his field? So he goes down in the attire of an old man with a white beard. And he asked him, okay, why are you doing this? It is not going to rain for a few more years. So why are you plowing your field? The man says, you seem to be somebody who is used to giving sermons. You go and give your sermons. Let me do my pursharth. So still Shivji requests him, like a jigyasu as to why are you doing this? So then finally he says, if I don't plow my field, will my plow not become rusty? And if I don't plow my field, will I not lose the habit of working hard? Then when it rains, will I be capable of carrying out this hard work? And will my plow be useful in tilling the field, like plowing the field? So then Shivji looks at him and then wonders whether he has also not blown his shank, because he had said when he blows his shank after 7 years, it would rain. So he takes his shank and says, let me practice and see whether it is still working. And he blows on the conch. And when he had said that when he would blow his conch, it would rain. So immediately it started raining. So though the shrap was for 7 years, within 2.5 years, you changed your destiny by your hard work, by your pursharth. So Brahmaraji mentioned about pursharth affecting prarabdha. I just thought of this story. And I was telling this story to a group of 200 teachers whom I addressed recently for Guruji's visit. Okay, by doing seva, what can they not achieve? We have to take courses. If we have not announced courses, go ahead and do it. With your Purusharth, you can achieve miracles. Your destiny can change by your free will if you do Purusharth.
Very beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Percy ji.
Very good.
Yeah.
Wonderful. It's very nice. This will make people, inspire people to use their free will accordingly.
See, for instance, I would like to share here. Gurudev says announce courses because you don't know who is there waiting to get this knowledge, right, from you. I have been very inspired by Vinod Menonji because he says he has never ever cancelled any course for want of the number. He's never gone into the number game. For him, whether it is 2 people, 1 person, or 100 people, if a course is announced, he will go ahead and take it. Because that person, whoever has come to receive knowledge at that time. So being inspired by him, I have been, I've had courses which are big numbered courses. Then especially I take Art Excel and all that. It is pre-COVID, it used to be big courses. But when there is a Sahaj announced or happiness announced, and there is only 1 person who registers, Sahaj especially, I have just gone ahead and done the course. It was because maybe that person would not be able to come if not for that time. So I see that in the light of whatever is happening here, in the sense that I have a free will there. There are teachers who go with the number game. They say only if I have 5 people, I will do the course. So that is their free will they're exercising. But my free will I would like to exercise is even if there is 1 person, I will go ahead and do it. And that person benefits. That is the adrishta phala of taking the course, even for a single person. Correct? It is, you're spending a lot of time, 3 days, and it's your quality time, but doesn't matter. It is meant to be, and therefore go ahead and be in sync with whatever is happening. So
it has happened to me also.
Yeah, the free will there, I think, is whether you want to go ahead, because I know a lot of teachers who postpone courses only because they've not got the number required. Although of course it's good to have big courses, you have that intention, but sometimes you've done everything and you the number of people who register is just the number who come. That is probably the prarabdha, or it is their that is how it is. So I thought I should just share this.
In this, I will say that, earlier times, Guruji used to say, take courses of 20 people, energy is there, and in that group energy, it is much better. The results are much better. But pro-COVID, he is saying, even if there is 1 person in the course, take it. That person has been waiting for you, waiting to get this knowledge. So with the times, even Gurudev has changed. And I think we should put our thinking in line with that of Gurudev's, not
Correct.
go by what he had earlier said. With the times, you have to change. And it is best to follow Gurudev. Now, why use our small minds?
Correct.
Even when I went to Australia and New Zealand for taking courses, there were 20 and 30 people in a course. And we are used to taking 100, 150 people courses, advanced courses in India. So when we went there, but then we have to realize that the population itself is so less over there. So you don't get those numbers there.
That is true.
And this free will work in positive direction only when you have viveka, right? So how do we, and this was my question few weeks back, and how do we improve our vivek buddhi or
knowledge,
enhance it, or is it inborn?
Knowledge is one. Of course, it is, partly it is prarabdha, because of whatever you have done in your previous life, that samskara has taken and brought you here. And with knowledge, you chisel it, you make it finer and finer.
Okay, thank you.
I think it is also awareness that you need to have, like even for the 5 core principles which are there, the golden rules that are given, the sutras, are we putting them into practice? With more and more awareness, keenness of mind, we need to see whether we ourselves are putting this, accepting people the way they are, being in the present moment. Are we really putting that into practice? The more the awareness, the keenness of the mind is there, that knowledge, once we put it into practice only, then what is that Sanskrit word for it? Nidhi, Dhyasa or something, I don't know.
Nididhyasana. Yeah.
Yeah, that has to be there. Then that awareness dawns on you. Yeah, that knowledge sinks in and viveka comes.
Yeah. That is why it is said, no, Atma Vare Shrotavyam Nididya. What is that? You must do Manana and you must also do Nididhyasana. So that knowledge, first of all, you have to listen to it. And then you analyze it. And then you make it your own by contemplating upon it.
Or maybe we can talk about Shraddha and faith tomorrow, please.
Yeah, we'll do that tomorrow. Okay. So wishing everyone a happy Makara Sankranti, Bogi, and the beginning of Uttarayana. Sankranti is, I think, tomorrow. Today is Bogi, I guess. So, and happy Lori for all those of you celebrating. Let us usher in continuing dedication and devotion, and may the best happen to all of us. Jai Gurudev.
Dr. Granda, I have written in the message.
Yes, I know. I read it. I think everyone else also may have read it.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, we have a yoga courses online that we take. We've been taking it for the last 2.5 years. We all together teachers in the GCC. And yeah, that's what Renuji has mentioned. Even if one student is there, we go ahead and do it. Even if there's no one, the 2 teachers who are there continue doing the session. We don't give it up. That's the spirit. Yeah. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev, Doctor. Happy
Thank you.
Pongal.
Makar Sankranti.
All
Thank you and Jai Gurudev.